This is the third and last of the little videos I'm putting up on Derek Mahon essay writing. There's a couple more videos going to be on Derek Mahon. I'm going to go through the poem Ecclesiastes and the poem Rattling for my grind class students, well, for everybody really, on YouTube videos, and I'm going to also go through the mind map, but that's later on in the year when we're doing a bit of revision. But this question is really for the students in my full-time class who have their homework to do this week, and their homework's to answer this question, okay? So it says, to what extent do you agree or disagree that Derek Mahon makes effective use of a diverse range of imagery and an engaging style to explore complex thematic concerns which are powerfully relevant to the modern world? Now that question is based on the Adrian Rich question from 2022. The yellow part, which is the language part, is word for word what they asked on Adrian Rich. And look, come on, think about it. Patrick Kavanagh, Mahon, Paula Meehan, Elizabeth Bishop. There's not a poet on the course who they couldn't say that this poet's, style is engaging and that the imagery they use is diverse. Diverse means there's loads of different types of images. So that's a really quite a generic phrase. Very easy, the easy part of the question. The harder part of the question on Rich was about her exploring kind of social as well as personal themes. So what I've done here is I've changed the second half, the thematic aspect of the question, to fit with the type of thing they could ask you on Mahon, and that's to explore complex thematic concerns, because he does, like, his work is on the surface quite easy because he tells these stories. We've been through them all. The Titanic sinking, the disastrous Scott expedition to the Antarctic, the massacre on Rathlin Island and its transformation into a bird sanctuary. All of these different stories he tells, but the crucial thing is that just underneath the surface of those stories are these kind of quite heavy, I suppose, if you want to use the colloquial term, complex thematic concerns, philosophical observations about human nature. So I thought it was nice. It's a nice question, okay? Now remember, when you're writing an essay, I'm going to break my own rule in a minute. I'll show you in a second. I don't want to see you writing really long, rambling opening paragraphs. I don't have an issue with length in terms of openings, but my experience as a teacher and as a marker is that often students who write very long opening paragraphs haven't done the planning, and they're nearly thinking as they're writing, and the opening paragraph is like a sketch of what they're maybe going to say, and it just lacks discipline. So that thinking should be done before you start writing. So for most of you, I think the key thing is just keep it short. Your opening, introduce, address the question, state your opinion on the question. To what extent do you agree? And you can either state that in a very simplistic way, I agree with the statement, or you can be a bit more subtle, and then get on with it. Now, if you're looking for kind of top grades, if you're looking for H3, H2, H1s, and believe me when I tell you, a H3 grade is a very, very good grade in Leaving Cert Higher Level English, your opening has to have something more than that. It has to be striking, grab the attention of the reader, be less formulaic. I've said to you before about opening with a quote can be a useful thing to do, and then tie it in. But anyway, I tried to craft some sort of interesting opening here, and all I'm doing is trying to give you ideas. But you need an opening paragraph to a poetry essay. That's at the OP, question facing with no quotation. You need a closing paragraph, okay? Again, it has to wrap everything up, and it really just needs to mirror the opening paragraph. And I know, again, the hackles of Mr. Perfection English teachers will be up saying, oh no, well you shouldn't just. I'm not saying you just repeat the same words, but there has to be a sense of, at the beginning you're saying, this is my stance. In the middle you're saying, this is the evidence to prove my stance. And at the end you're saying, reiterating, so therefore that evidence proves my stance. Now that's the idea. So that's called coherence of delivery, and it gives a circular structure to your work. In the middle you're looking to write 5 to 7 RIC paragraphs or sections. So when I say RIC, I'm talking about writing which is always relevant to the question under discussion, no waffle, informed by quotation and reference to the particular poems under discussion, written in as clear a manner as you can, trying to display control over language and vocabulary, yes, but the focus in making it easy to read. Okay, make it easy to read. Make it easy for me to understand what you're trying to say. Make your points intelligible. And of course, you have to contextualize your points. So a great example would be students might say that in an answer like this, that Mahon's style is engaging and engaging, but they might not say what makes it engaging, or they might fail to fully tease that out. In the same way, they might say that he employs a diverse range of imagery, but nowhere in the essay would they deal with what makes the imagery diverse, what makes the thematic concerns complex, why are they relevant, powerfully relevant to the modern world. So these are all the things that have to be explained, and that's what context means, okay? So that's what the critical analysis requirement is. Any poetry essay, you're disappointed as a writer, as a reader, if a student hasn't managed to squeeze out at least 1,000 words in a poetry essay. For most of you, that's going to be between 4 and 5 pages of A4. Your minimum requirement for poems, if I read an essay and somebody's only written about 3 poems, I don't think they've done the work. 4 is your minimum. I like 5. A lot of students, the very best students I've taught over the years, and as soon as I say that, I'm thinking about a number of people who, didn't need to be taught by me, just brilliant writers, and they were able to display knowledge of, upwards of 6 poems, dipping in and out of them without summarising anything. And of course, at the end, you have to remember to reread your work, take pride in your work, watch out for the basic things. You're going to piss off any English teacher if you're not, punctuating properly. If you're, your sentence, if you're overusing conjunctions, making sentences really long and difficult to follow, have a bit of pride in what you're doing, okay? Now, so again, as I said, any poetry essay, those of you who aren't in my class and watching this on YouTube, any poetry essay will require you to comment on the style of writing employed by the poet, that's the yellow bit here, and the thematic concerns addressed by the poet, and that's the blue bit there. Now, I'm going to look at this as an example of an opening. It is long. I'm going to hold my hand up and say it is long. But what I was trying to do here was be a little bit inventive and impactful. Okay? So just have a look at this very quickly. So this, you can imagine the student, I open up the booklet, and this is the way the student opens on a question about range of imagery and complex thematic concerns. A man goading his ghost into the howling snow. A pandemonium of prams, pianos, sideboards, winches, boilers bursting. A metaphysical wind. A preacher standing on a corner, stiff with rhetoric. A mad bastard gunned down in a blind yard between 10 sleeping lorries and an electricity generator. Yes, on reflection, there is no doubt that the Derek Mahon poems I have studied are filled with a diverse and rich range of images. That fact alone makes his style of writing engaging. When combined with his narrative approach and his ability to use the stories he tells as a way of introducing and exploring often quite complex thematic and philosophical concerns, it seems obvious to me that this poet's work is powerfully and immediately relevant to the modern world. Now, that's a top quality opening paragraph, okay? Now, why is it a bit long? Because I wanted to really catch the reader's attention by putting that section in there. And what that section in there shows is, A, you've done the prep, you know your quotes, you're making a really good impression on the examiner. But it also shows you're kind of you're an original writer. You're coming up with a way to make an opening which grabs the reader's attention and draws them in. So it said about diverse range of images. And what did you do? You gave 5 different images from 5 different poems that you've studied. And then you got to the question. Now this part here, this is a really good opening paragraph on its own. Okay, on its own. And it comes to just 81 words, which for most of you would be between 8 and 10 lines. So that's a decent length opening paragraph. And what it does is it directly addresses the question. So look, the poems I have studied are filled with a diverse and rich range of images. So you clearly agree with that part of the question, and that's the part that is highlighted in yellow by me. Then the word engaging is there, and again, that is in the question. You mentioned his narrative approach, which is one of the things that makes his work engaging. And then the way he uses the stories he tells as a way of introducing and exploring often quite complex thematic and philosophical concerns. And that's referring to the theme element of the question. And then bringing it to the final part of the question, that's why you're saying his work is powerfully and immediately relevant to the modern world. So look, it's the purpose is, the bar in English, you have to be on task, and that's a really good opening. It's confident, it flows, and it has that little bit of spark. You know that phrase I keep on saying over and over again that all English teachers really die for? originality and freshness. That's what we want to see, somebody writing with a little bit of imagination, a little bit of personality. And I think opening with this section here, it's not a bad way to do it. You might get a teacher go, no, I don't want you, that's too informal. Look, just show you know your stuff, get on the question, reread so that you haven't made loads of mistakes, state your stance on the question, and then get into your first poem. Okay? Now what I did was here, I wanted to explore a poem that I haven't actually done in the grind classes yet, but I'll be doing it next week, and it's called A Chinese Restaurant in Portrush. It's a poem I particularly like. And I wanted to explore this poem in a kind of a patient way. So what I did was I've explored it across 2 paragraphs. So there's one paragraph, and there's the second paragraph. Now, I've written quite a lot about Chinese Restaurant in Portrush, but that's okay. I'm not summarising the poem. What I'm trying to do is show knowledge, explain why I think the style is engaging, and then bring that to the universal themes. Have a look. Nowhere is that relevance more obviously apparent than in A Chinese Restaurant in Portrush, a poem which explores distinctly modern themes of identity, emigration, and integration. Now, folks, that is a topic sentence. There's a link between the topic sentence of this paragraph and what was said at the end of the previous paragraph with the word relevant and relevance. So there needs to be links between your paragraphs if you're going to pick up your coherence marks. It indicates planning. So I know what this paragraph is about. I know it's about this poem. And I know that you're going to make the point that it's about, that this poem is relevant to the modern world. So that's a really, really good topic sentence. Now you've got to go in and show knowledge. So you're relevant. Now you've got to show that you're informed. Here's the information. This poem, which is typical of Mahon's narrative style, there's another continuity link between the opening paragraph and your first development paragraph, because you mentioned the fact that he takes a narrative approach in your opening. You said it, now you're proving it. Is built around a distinct, clever, and recognizable symbol. Sorry, I made a little error there. So you're talking about symbols, and again, why are you talking about symbols? Because you're a good student and you want to be on the question. The question asked about how Mahon uses a diverse range of images and symbols, interchangeable. So that's why that word is there. The setting is the seaside town of Portrush before the invasion of tourists arrived to disrupt the peace. Mahon uses sibilance, you're talking about his style, that's relevant to style, to establish a quiet, contented atmosphere in the opening sequence when he describes, before the first visitor comes, the spring softening the sharp air of the coast in time for the first invasion. Now again, by the way, I underlined and marked the S's there, you don't need to do that, of course. His attention to seemingly incidental details, again, that's another aspect of his style, results in the cinematic image of a girl, cinematic image, relating to the question, of a girl who strides, past the Northern Counties Hotel, light-footed, swinging a book bag. Now, can you see there that I really know the poem? Can you imagine if an examiner was reading that? Wouldn't that show that the kid who's writing the paragraph really knows the poem? And then you bring it back to the question, this line with its triad of verbs, again, showing knowledge of language. So what do I mean by that? Well, you've got strides, strides, and you've got swings. There's not a triad there. I'm after leaving a thing out, okay? But it's, always reread your work. Carefully selected, precise verbs. An inventive compound adjective. The compound adjective is when you add 2 words together to make a new word. That's light-footed. Highlights the appeal of Mahon's style. So there you're on the question. They're asking about his style being engaging, and you're saying it's engaging because it's got cinematic imagery where the language is very precise and carefully selected, and it draws you into the story. That's really good. So you're showing knowledge. You're on task. Are you finished with that poem? No, you're not finished with that poem. But the paragraph that you've written is 145 words long, which for most of you will be about 16 or 17 lines of the passage, of A4, if you've got average sized handwriting. So are you going to continue on in that paragraph now and deal with the other aspects of the question? I wouldn't have thought so. I think if you're clever, you just take an A-B paragraph structure. to deal, if you're going to go poem by poem and you want to deal with the poems in a kind of a very thoughtful way, you don't have to squeeze it all into one paragraph. So there you've shown knowledge of the poem, you've shown why you think his style is engaging, because it's, a narrative style, and now you're going to bring it into why these themes are so relevant to the modern world. And that's what the second paragraph is about. This is part B. At the heart of the poem is a character, and you're going to use that as a link through all of Mahon's poems that you discuss, because there are characters in all of the poems. The proprietor of the Chinese restaurant who stands at the door as if the world were young. Again, quotation, showing knowledge. This beautiful simile, again, you're showing knowledge of language, is so striking. Striking is synonymous with engaging. The monosyllabic language, again, words of one syllable, showing your awareness of language, talking about why his style is engaging, is as simple as the image being painted. This man who is far away from home, separated from family, from culture, and from his roots, is not despairing. He is filled with hope. That's why he looks out as if the world was young. It's lovely, lovely, lovely image. There's a sense of optimism there. He looks out over the Atlantic Ocean, and there in the distance is an ideogram on a sea cloud, and the light of heaven upon the mountains of Donegal. And there's that image integrated into your sentence of that, sailboat, the sail from a boat, reminding Mahon and making him think of a Chinese letter, a shape. And suddenly you get what the poem is about. This wonderful image, again, why are you saying wonderful? Because the question asked about engaging style, the question asked about diverse range of images, conveys Mahon's thematic and philosophical observation, bringing it to that part of the question with such clarity. Again, you're enthusiastic because you're saying it's engaging. The shape of the sail is reminiscent of a Chinese symbol. The owner of the restaurant is thinking of home. But there is beauty in this new place too, as the light shines, lighting up the distant Donegal hills. This exploration of the theme of identity and emigration is executed with such skill, carried out with such skill, through the juxtaposing images of the ideogram and the light of heaven, that it perfectly represents how Mahon's ability to craft and shape striking images makes his work so engaging and thought-provoking. Now there you've got two paragraphs in which you show your knowledge. They're relevant to the question because they're about the themes being discussed by Mahon, in this case, identity and culture and emigration. His style of writing being engaging, the images that he uses. The question asks about diverse range of images, and you've got the images highlighted in this passage, and you're commenting on why it's interesting. It's all written carefully when you're trying not to make mistakes. When I spotted a mistake there, because I reread my work, I fix the mistake before the examiner gets to read it, and that's very high standard response. So that's what any essay should contain. It should contain knowledge, not summary. It should contain focus on the question, not lip service to the question, and it should contain some element of explanation as to why the examples you're giving are relevant to the question under discussion. I don't know whether that was useful to you. That essay, by the way, will be the completed answer, where I bring in other poems, will be distributed in class in the next couple of weeks after you've handed me up your essay. And again, for those, if you thought the video was useful, I'd appreciate it if you'd do that. For those people who are not in my classes and are looking for notes, pmcbrunner@iCloud. You can contact me on pmcbrunner on iCloud, and I'll let you know how you can access notes. Thanks very much, folks.